And they wonder why there's no real rock and roll stars around. Because this is the shit you got us doing, fuckers.
Hey! We're recording the podcast! Shut up!
Good morning to you, wherever you are, because it is
Morning Somewhere!
for August 28th, 2024. My name is Bernie Burns. Sitting right over there, she's ending our 15-year feud in order to reunite with me. It's Ashley Burns. Say hi to Ashley.
Look, we got a tour to do.
God, I love that drop. That's one of my favorite clips of all time. We'll talk about the Oasis reunion in just a second, but yeah, they're getting back together. Liam Gallagher is a never-ending source of entertainment. It's just so goddamn funny. He's, of course, one of the two brother frontmen of the former band Oasis, which is getting back together.
Former.
Can I just play this full clip real
Please
quick?
do.
This is him making tea for himself after, the band broke up and he was suffering a little bit financially from lack of record sales.
It's fucking good, man. Now, in the 90s, I got someone else to fucking do it, but now I can't fucking, money is tight, too tight to mention. Got to do it yourself, haven't you? No one buys records these days. In the 90s, I had about 4 people doing it. Little geezer doing a kettle, our kid, some other little doing that, and some other little fucking idiot doing that. Now you got to do your fucking, now you got to do it yourself these days, you know what I mean? Because these fucking little smart asses download fucking tunes for niche. And they wonder why there's no real rock and roll stars around. Because this is the shit you got us doing, fuckers.
It's a bold strategy there. I hope it pays off. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about yesterday. So as you know, we said in yesterday's podcast, we ran out the door because Ashley had a finger injury, which we will not go into great detail on because we don't want to gross anybody out early this morning, but she cut her finger. How are you doing, Ash?
I'm doing good. I went to the emergency room called A&E here and tried to get some
accidents and emergencies. This was both an accident and an emergency.
I tried to see if I need stitches. They said, you do, but we can't really do stitches on the knuckles. So instead, I'm just wearing like 8,000 layers of gauze around my finger for the next week or so. And just let me tell you, I am rediscovering how many things I need my fingers for that I currently can't use my fingers for.
Now, Steve, you're a lefty. That's on your right hand, right?
Yes, it is on my right hand. So you'd think non-dominant, great, wonderful, but that's also mouse hand. That's half a typing hand. If I want to wash my face or my hair, too bad. This is the tricky time. Are you gonna wash my hair for me?
I will happily wash your hair for you. I like that that's your solution. You'll have me wash your hair. Whereas for guys, it would just be like, I guess I'm not washing my hair for 5 days. You get the assembly line with the kids. But because we had to rush out and go to A&E, maybe we should talk a little bit about that experience, about what it was like to go through. We were there, about an hour, maybe?
Yeah, I was there maybe an hour. And then they took me in, they asked me questions, they dressed it, and then they sent me out.
They asked you questions? Did they ask you questions? Remember?
No, they did not ask me the kind of your questions.
Longtime listeners of our podcast might remember I hurt my finger at one point, and it was important to them because I hurt a finger on my dominant hand. And they said usually when it's on your dominant hand, it's not accidental, it's a defensive wound. So they got Ashley out of the room and asked if everything was okay. And I covered for you, just so you know.
On the one hand, I want to be like, how dare you? But I'm actually so glad that they asked those lovely questions and made sure that you were taken care of.
Yeah. It felt I had never been asked anything like that before in my life. And then I probably went overboard, like saying everything was fine, honestly. I was second guessing myself later. That was kind of an interesting situation to be in as a grown man, honestly. And I was grateful for it. Honestly grateful for it.
No, it's good that they did that. But no, nothing like that here. They just, they dressed it. They said, keep it dry for a week and then you can take it off and then you're good to go. And then I went to leave. I stopped at the reception desk. I was like, is there anything I need to do to check out? And she just looked at me funny and she goes,
goodbye.
No. She's like, did they give you any follow-up instructions? And I was like, well, they told me to do this. And she goes, okay, then no, you could be on your way.
Off you go.
And that was it. That was the end of it.
Which is the normal procedure for so many people in the world. But as Americans, we're like, it's like when you walk out of a convenience store without buying anything. You have to
hold your hands out a little bit extra far from your sides to show that you didn't do anything suspect. You're not hiding any treats in your pockets or anything.
I adopt my non-stealing posture. That's what I do. And it was, you have that same feeling walking out of any kind
It
of.
does. I feel like I'm robbing the place.
For me, it's the pharmacy when I'm standing there with the bag and I'm like, so I'm going to leave. And they're like, you should do that now.
Okay, bye.
Get out of
Can
here.
I help you?
Weirdo. But as an offshoot of that, yesterday we were rushing out the door. I did say that was a raw podcast yesterday. We just dropped it straight out of the mixer and that went out basically we did it live, Ashley.
We did it live.
And didn't do any editing. Just a little bit behind the scenes here. Sometimes when we get off on the rails and tangents and we talk off the cuff, a lot of times I will fact check the things that we talked about while I'm editing. And yesterday there's two things I probably would have fact checked one of them at least. One was I was in the car and we were listening to the podcast to make sure there was no technical errors or anything like that. And I said that, first of all, I said Caroline. I probably would have edited that out. But,
That's all right. I corrected you on that one.
but I called it a Tim Burton movie, Coraline, the 15th anniversary re-release of this movie. And I thought, is it a Tim Burton movie? And I went and looked it up, and sure enough, it's often mistaken as a Tim Burton movie. So just so you know, sometimes if we have a conversation about something and it turns out to be factually incorrect, I will try to edit around the incorrectness, or sometimes we'll just shade ourselves in the link dump, take it on the chin, and we'll put the accurate information in the link dump. Like that, the thing we linked yesterday was an article on Screen Rant that said people often mistake Coraline as a Tim Burton stop motion movie. So,
And it is not. So this is, just to correct ourselves, Coraline is done by Henry Selick and a team of animators out of Portland who also worked on Kubo and the Two Strings, I believe.
There's a really cool animated GIF that I love, which is the stop motion animators filmed themselves in time lapse animating the stop motion characters. So the stop motion characters in real time, but you see this ghost image of this guy in fast motion, zooming all around her, doing all of her little hand motions and everything. It's one of my favorite animated GIFs.
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. I like those.
The other thing I would have corrected, Ashley,
Is an important one. The most important one.
well, it's video game talk, and I got something wrong, and that makes people so fucking mad when you talk about video games. You get something wrong. I said you could
Welcome
romance.
to my life.
You could romance Garrus in the video game Mass Effect, and people were very upset that no, you cannot romance Garrus as a male shepherd, only as a female shepherd.
Look at it this way. I see that as just a lot of male sheps in the world who are also sad that they could not, in fact, romance Garrus because Garrus is easily the best one that you can do.
All I'm saying to
Bird and
BioWare,
all, apparently.
BioWare, think of all the hot gay bird sex you're leaving on the table by not allowing that. I think they would go back and they would probably patch that. But I guess actually, if the character's straight, it would make sense that you wouldn't be able to do that, right?
Yeah, and if you are really if you need your Birdman action, there are mods for that.
Or just do your FemShep run. And
Yeah,
then
do your FemShep run.
Am I correct in saying I never played FemShep? Can you?
Jennifer Hale's performance is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, so my apologies to everyone who felt like I was egregious by saying that you could romance Garrus as a male chef. I'm going to go ahead and blame being immersed in Tumblr because I saw nothing but images of male Shep and Garrus having sex on Tumblr. So
Well, just to close it out, all credit to Mr. Garrus, also known as Brandon Keener.
Brandon Keener, who is the voice actor for Garrus. Sorry if we besmirched your character in any way. That was not our intention at all.
So moving on to today's news, Oasis.
Yeah, so I love Liam Gallagher so much. He and his brother Noel, who are just renowned for getting in fights, literal fights sometimes on stage. They've had a feud for 15 years, and now Oasis, the band, Ashley, is getting back together.
Yes, they're getting back together and going on tour.
Going on tour in the UK and in Ireland. And we had a discussion with our friends here in the UK because sometimes you're not sure what crosses over. Oasis, when they came to the US, they were talking about how they were going to be bigger than the Beatles and everything like that. And I think they were, especially Morning Glory. What's the Story, Morning Glory? That album was huge in the US. It did 25 million copies worldwide. Absolutely banger of an album. I think it was something like 17 times platinum.
Yeah, 17 times platinum.
But I had to ask our UK friends, were they popular here in the UK? And the answer was yes. And what were some other bands? We asked about...
we asked about Amy Winehouse.
Right.
We asked about... Who else? Spice Girls. Look, Spice Girls is important.
It is, they were a big deal in the US.
Formative British group for me.
I think Amy Winehouse would probably be the big one that I feel like she was bigger in the US than in the UK. But maybe I'm just being kind of poisoned by the UK tabloid culture.
Yeah, well, it can be hard to tell sometimes based on someone's presence sort of in tabloids as well as someone's presence in general pop culture. Because tabloids is such a specific corner of coverage.
Yeah.
And it fights dirty, and she was all over that one.
And it's like it runs so counter to the polite culture of the UK, like the proper politeness that's, part of the UK identity. The tabloid culture just throws all of that out the window. Like, you'll have people like saying, "Oh, pardon me," in a shop. Meanwhile, in the background is a cover of going, "This person fuck that person," whatever. It's really kind of bizarre.
Scandal.
The juxtaposition is wild. But from the London Evening Standard, The Standard, this is an article that came out yesterday by Lisa McLaughlin. They are saying that demand for Oasis tickets will absolutely dwarf that seen for Taylor Swift as band reunites for a comeback tour. This is one DJ in particular, a music expert. In the wake of the news, music journalist and DJ Kevin McManus has predicted that the demand for Oasis tickets will be enormous, potentially exceeding the frenzy for Taylor Swift's Eras tour tickets. Speaking to ITV News, McManus explained, "I think people forget that the two Nebworth shows they did, almost 4% of the population tried to get tickets to those shows."
No, so that's specifically they tried to get tickets. That doesn't mean 4 million people made it to those shows,
They
right?
sold out 250,000 tickets, but it was a ridiculous amount of people who tried to buy tickets. They were that huge.
So putting that into perspective for us as Americans, right? Let's say band says, "I'm doing 2 shows." How many people would have to try to buy tickets in the U.S. for it to be 4% of the population?
4% of the U.S. population at about, let's call it 350 million. That's about 15 million people, just under 15 million people.
So imagine 15 million people trying to buy a ticket for one of 2 shows.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like just putting it in perspective for the percentage of the population. That is absolutely wild.
And of course, this is one expert that's saying it's going to dwarf Taylor Swift. I don't know if that plays out over time. We'll see. But I know that people are very excited about the reunion of Oasis. Will you go see it?
Well, potentially, not only because there were a lot of Oasis songs. Morning Glory was a good one. The reason why we asked our friends in the UK was Oasis a really big deal here is because Wonderwall has become such a meme type song. It's almost in like the category of All Star by Smash Mouth. Yeah, it's almost like
in meme territory.
Yeah, it's like a joke, but it's not. It's a legitimately very popular song, but it's like the song that you're not allowed to ask the DJ to play,
Right.
kind of.
Anyway, here's Wonderwall.
Exactly. But I'd be interested in going to see this show, not only because I think it would be an amazing concert that would be really like replaying my entire youth, but also, Bernie, because it could just turn into a fight.
It could just turn into a fight.
We
You
could
never
get
know.
a boxing match and a concert all in one. How's that for value for dollar?
You never know. It could be like 2 events in one. That'd be incredible.
And then suddenly Mike Tyson walks out on stage.
Oh my God. I want Liam Gallagher, Noel Gallagher, and Mike Tyson on drums. That'd be amazing. But I wonder too if there'll be a lot of press around these shows, which are going to take place in 2025. I wonder if Vegas will take odds on whether or not they'll get in a fight on stage. Right?
I mean, Vegas will take odds on just about anything, right?
God, he's just like every time Liam Gallagher opens his mouth, to me it's always entertaining, you know. And I gotta say, it is rock stars seemingly never get canceled. I don't know what it is. Don't want to go too much into their behavior, but it's wild the things you hear about rock stars and the things that they say, and they just never seem to get canceled.
Well, it's like The Drop, right? This guy's upset because he doesn't have 4 people making tea.
And he's calling that a fucker, and this one. Well, they bleep the word, but it's just crazy. This old geezer. And then at the end of it, he caps it all off by calling out the audience, like, "Fuck you guys. I gotta make my own tea because of you losers."
I mean, that's why though, right? Is you kind of have to agree to be canceled.
I see. I hear what you're saying there a little bit. You kind of got to go along with it.
There are, of course, some things outside of one's control, like TV, like show deals and so on.
You mean like literally canceled? Where the term
canceled.
comes from?
Yes, but to some degree, in the court of of social opinion, if you're just like, I don't care,
I get
then
what you're saying.
It's very hard to chase someone out who doesn't care what you're saying.
Like what you're saying is like, Tucker Carlson is not going to get canceled by like society. He'll get canceled from a television show. That show will be canceled. But in the traditional societal cultural conversation of being canceled, it can't happen because he just won't go along with it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, that might be also a very rock star mentality.
He's not going to go into hiding or whatever.
He's going to...
He's not going to tuck his tail and go.
He's going to use the T guy as a human shield.
He'll take the bow tie off. That's as far as it's going. That's as much as he's going to change for you. But like, you know, in a more modern way too, I mean, this goes back to even the conversation that Chappell Roan was having about calling people out for coming up to her in public and they don't have a right to talk to her. She's pivoted a little bit on this where she's saying now kind of more specific language around it where she's saying it's like you should never touch a woman. You should never lay your hands on a woman you don't know. And I think maybe somebody spoke to her and said, you know, the general thing of going after the population at large probably won't work out, but people can identify with what you're saying of like, just don't touch a woman you don't know.
Although I will say that as you noted when we discussed her previously in her statements, we were sort of waiting to see what the reaction would be to her statements because she's approaching this from a very sort of different language direction than we've seen in the past. A lot of times people will be a little bit kind of like combative or antagonistic because they're just so fed up with people. And she approached it very much more from the sort of the Gen Z sort of emotional language, which is, you know, it's important for my mental health to have my time and you're not entitled to my off time.
Talking about boundaries
and all these things. And overall, I thought the response to her has been really good. There have been a lot of people saying, that's right. People are the worst. Not me, of course, but people.
I just think people can relate more to the conversation now or the things she said more recently about specifically being a woman and don't touch a woman you don't know. I think people can relate to that more. Or in modern news, Australia just passed, was it a new law that they have about the right to disconnect?
Yes. So that's a new thing in Australia where they passed a law where workers have the right to disconnect. So not take calls, not respond to emails in their off time. And legally, they cannot be penalized for doing so. Like you have the right to disconnect outside work hours. You are not always on.
So and everyone agrees this is a good thing. Absolutely, you should be able to clock out of work. Does that apply to rock stars? I think it does. Like they should be able to clock out. They just can't.
She said that as well. That was part of her discussion is like, you know, I have my times where I'm on and I'm in public, you know, and I'm doing publicity and that is my work time. This is my off time. Leave me alone.
By the way, can I just say, it's a very EU style thing where it's very progressive. Everybody loves it. I'm sure every single IT person in the world is going, yeah, right. I'll believe it. I'll believe it when I can say, oh, yeah, I know the server was down at 1 a.m., but right to disconnect. And it's like, I can't imagine. Every IT person has to be rolling their eyes so hard about that.
Yeah, the thing is, it says, so under the bill, employees have the right to refuse to engage with their communications outside working hours unless deemed unreasonable. And there are times where people will be on call. This happens a lot in the medical field as well, where doctors will be, they're not working, but they're on call, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of thing will continue. Maybe it will just have to be more specified in contracts what it means to be available and so on. But overall, I think it's a really good thing to be able to disconnect.
While we're pivoting, we're talking about tech workers and IT workers. Can we pivot to some tech news real quick?
We can.
So Apple has announced that they are going to be cutting 100 jobs. And sometimes you can hear things like, have you heard about this game Concord, by the way?
Yes, I have, only because I heard about it because it came out and it didn't do well. I'd never heard about it before.
Okay, so it's not just me, right? So between Chappell Roan and this game Concord, I'm like, am I missing out on major sections of news? I had never heard of this game until I heard it was a failure. It was so strange. And sometimes that's weird how you can be introduced to something that you felt like you should know about only after it's gone.
Yeah, and it's weird because it's been in development for like 8 years. And it's got a good team of developers. It's got developers from Activision, from Bungie. This is their first project as a new studio called Firewalk Studios. It's owned by Sony. The game is being published by Sony. So it's PlayStation 5, but it came out on PC as well. So it's on Steam. And Steam is where a lot of these numbers are coming from, because on Steam, you can actually look at the Steam charts and see how a game is doing in terms of, say, like multiplayer and so on. So which is where we find out, like, Palworld has gone absolutely insane.
Right, concurrent players.
And so on. And the reason that this is making headlines now is because this first-party Sony-published game has come out. And you know what its max player count was?
No.
660 players concurrently playing on Steam.
For a first-party Sony exclusive.
And then
That's
it
wild.
dropped way off, and it dropped down to like 230.
Wow.
So this is a game that like it's making headlines because no one heard of it. Then it came out. It's a live service, a multiplayer hero shooter type game, which, you know, is what everyone has been making. But this one didn't work. Why didn't this one work? It just didn't.
There's another game that kind of like, I think it did kind of come out of nowhere and is a huge hit. It's the one that's enormous in China. I have had to learn about this game through cultural osmosis just by being on the internet. I can't help but learn about this game.
Yeah, this is, you're talking about Black Myth Wukong.
Okay, well, before you say anything about the game, here's what I think the game is about. You play a person from the Planet of the Apes, and you are surrounded by hot women. That's all I have picked up from people talking about this game.
You're so close. It's an action RPG, but it's rooted in Chinese mythology. Hence the character that you're playing. So no, it does not take place on Planet of the Apes.
It looks like Planet of the Apes, right? It's like a monkey person. Is that
I hope
I'm not being.
That's the hero that you're playing. You're the destined one. I don't know a lot about the specific mythology that it's tackling, but that it is based on Chinese mythology. So that game came out, and do you know what its peak player count was?
I'm gonna guess 850.
Its peak player count, this was 6 days ago, 2.4 million.
Wow.
So it came out, it's a huge deal. But what's really interesting about this is it's being driven largely by Chinese players, as would be appropriate, given that it's really focused on the Chinese mythology. So this one came out and has absolutely gone wild, right? This is a huge game in terms of concurrent players. And you get this other game that came out from Sony that's a Sony first-party game, and nothing.
You're gonna give me an opportunity to play and link my other favorite animated GIF, which is the Steam player counts by time, and then when PUBG shows up and completely changes.
Oh, that's a fun one. Yeah, we'll put that in the link dump.
Graph. That's a crazy one.
It's because I believe this Black Myth Wukong has peaked just behind PUBG's peak.
But so looping this back around to Apple, sometimes like with Concord, you hear about it and it reveals something terrible, like this game that fell flat on its face as soon as it launched. But sometimes you hear like bad news that reveals something good, and that's the case with Apple. They laid off 100 people. Actually, it's from their books division, right? From the Apple books and the bookstore?
Books and news, but it seems like it's primarily focused on books, which makes some kind of sense. I know that Apple Books has been a feature of iOS for years and years, but I feel like it either never figured itself out, it never got momentum, or it was hamstrung from doing so. I believe there were some court, like some legal decisions in court about what they could and couldn't do with Apple Books, probably as far as preventing them from behaving in a monopolistic nature or something like that. And so Apple Books has never really taken off. So I guess they're just focusing away from that.
But this is essentially a project that was cut, and the last time Apple did job cuts was when they killed their EV project. Maybe it wasn't an EV, a car.
The secret vehicle.
The secret Apple vehicle, yeah. That was the last time we heard about it. But this is the kind of thing that highlights the fact that Apple does not typically cut jobs. Like, they don't do the big mass tech layoffs that other massive tech companies do. This is from a Verge article from back in 2023. Then there was also an MSNBC article we'll link where Tim Cook talks about layoffs being an absolute last resort for the company. The Verge article, though, from Mitchell Clark is comparing Apple's lack of layoffs to other major tech companies. It says, still until now, Apple's lack of layoffs has set it apart from many big tech companies that have announced major cuts. Those include Google, 12,000 jobs, Amazon, 27,000 jobs, Meta, 21,000, Microsoft, 10,000 jobs.
So like 100 here is
making headlines.
It is layoffs, but it's not layoffs at the scale that we're currently accustomed to.
To put it in perspective, too, a lot of publicly traded companies have regulations as to when they have to report something as being a layoff, a reduction in their workforce. Apple has an estimated 160,000 employees. So 100 employees losing their jobs because a project was cut is major headline for Apple. To me, that says a lot for how Apple runs their company, because this is a company that's been through a lot, and they try to lay off people as an absolute last resort.
No, so you're right. That does say, it sort of teaches the other side. It's like yes, it's a negative headline, but teaches you a good thing as a result.
Yeah, right. As opposed to finding out, I'm hearing about this thing for the first time because it's died and it's gone away. All right, Ashley, let's wrap this up so we can get in line to go buy Oasis tickets.
I got to make some tea first. Before we go, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Connor and Tyler Thomas Teal. Thank you both for sponsoring this episode of our show at patreon.com/morningsomewhere.
All right, well, that does it for us today, August 28th, 2024. We will be back to talk to you tomorrow. We hope you will be here as well.
Bye, everybody.